Chapter 13, Christmas Break. Wake up, please wake up. Emily was sitting in the intensive care unit in Halifax, waiting for some sign of movement, but the only movement was the drip falling through the plastic IV tube attached to Tess's thin arm. Emily reached out to extract her sister's small hand as she slept inside the cage of the bed. It was hot and limp. Her mum arrived. "What is it, Mom? What did they say?" Emily asked. "She has a parasite called Giardia. It's common to get it in infected water or contaminated food. In Canada, we call it beaver fever because beaver dams sometimes contaminate the water supply. She probably caught it in Beijing, Em." She looked so tiny. Emily leaned back into her mother's arms. "It explains why she was eating a lot but not gaining any weight," her mum said, "and why she had those painful stomach cramps." "I feel so bad. I didn't even notice she was losing weight. It happened so gradually. She seemed okay most of the time," said Emily. "It's entirely treatable, Em. The antibiotics will get rid of it soon," her mother assured her. "She's just dehydrated now, but I do wish I had known about it. Why didn't you tell me she wasn't feeling well?" "I guess I just got preoccupied with things." Emily decided she would wait until later to tell her mum about the assignment and what she'd been doing. "Sorry, Mom." "I'm going to get a cup of tea," her mother said, stroking Emily's hair. "Do you want to come?" "No, thanks. I'll stay." "She'll wake up soon, Em. Try not to worry. I'll be right back." But Emily was worried, especially after the horrific accident that killed Mei Ling's father. She remembered her conversation about it with Raj at the Beijing airport the night she and Tess had flown to Canada. They were traveling as unaccompanied minors, and Tess had her plasticized passport holder around her neck. "This is so embarrassing, Em. I don't want to wear this," Tess said after they waved goodbye to their dad at security. "Just wear it until we get upstairs, okay? Then you can put it in your bag," Emily said. "Okay," Tess agreed. When they passed through security, Emily saw Raj in another line. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Hey," he said, as he put his shoes back on. "I thought I'd visit the airport, see you off." She looked at his slight sneer and realized it was a silly question. "Sorry," she said. "I guess you're leaving for Delhi. How long until your flight?" she asked. 2 hours. I'll hang out in the lounge," he said, nonchalant. Then, "I have a couple of guest pass if you want to come with me." "Sure," Tess said quickly before Emily could answer. "This is Tess," Emily said to Raj. "Hi, Tess." Raj looked at her carefully. "You look a lot like your big sister," he said, "except for the beautiful red hair." Tess beamed at Raj. Emily frowned, amazed how he had won her over so quickly. They settled into the lounge with drinks and snacks. Tess had 8 small bags of pretzels in a pile in front of her, next to a plate full of olives. Thankfully, her tummy ache seemed to have disappeared. "Healthy eating," said Raj, smiling at her. Emily sat across from him, unsure what to say. He eased the discomfort by asking Tess about the holidays and what she wanted for Christmas. When Tess got up to refill her plate with olives, Emily blurted, "I didn't get Mei Ling's dad killed by making us fail the Wheel of Powers, did I?" "Oh, it's not your fault," Raj said, as he twirled his silver ring around his finger. "Remember what Ravana said. This is her way of showing us that she will do anything to get us to stop. What could be a greater deterrent than the death of someone close to us?" "I'm trying to remember the diamond field and how no one really dies, but it's not helping," Emily said. "The stakes are higher than any of us thought," Raj said. His nonchalant demeanor was erased by a deeply furrowed brow. "Do you think bad things will keep happening until we succeed?" Emily asked. "The longer we take to do this, the worse it will get. No one is safe," Raj said with conviction. He paused. "Maybe Ravana did us a favor by getting us to pay attention." "But it's so awful," said Emily. Raj looked her straight in the eye. "Emily, what's wrong with the planet is much more than just global warming and natural disasters. Ravana is everywhere. She's affecting everything and everyone." On the drive home from the airport, Raj's senses were assaulted by the distinctive odor of the Delhi night air. The acrid smell of cow dung was mixed with the sweet fragrance of incense and the pungent scent of onion and garlic, mixed with a dash of diesel fumes. He had almost forgotten the chaos on the road as auto rickshaws competed with cars and pedal rickshaws for limited space. The cars in front of them stopped suddenly to make way for a cow as it ambled freely across several lanes of traffic. He smiled to himself and thought, Beijing may be dirty, but it's definitely more orderly. His mother greeted him with a tight hug, refusing to let him go until he hugged her back. "Your dad is working late tonight, Raj," she said, apologetically. Ramita was there in a bright yellow sari, her long black hair hanging past her waist, and a big smile on her face. She had come for dinner without her husband in honor of her brother's return. She squeezed Raj in a hug, and he returned it readily. The siblings laughed and shared stories over a luscious meal as their mother beamed at them. Finally, Raj excused himself. "I'm off to bed, Mummy," he said as he leaned to kiss her cheek. "Your father will be here to see you at breakfast, Raj," she said, holding his hand for a brief moment. "Get some rest. I know you must be tired. Tomorrow we'll go out to the shops and get you some new clothes." She was clearly overjoyed to have him home, but Raj could tell something was troubling her. Ramita had stepped outside the dining room and was waiting for him. "Raj," she whispered, "you have to know what's happening with Dad." All the merriment of the evening was gone from her face. Raj looked at her, not sure that he wanted to know. "It's horrible, and we don't know if it's true, but a rival company has accused him of using child labor in one of his factories," she said, grasping tightly to Raj's hands. "What?" He shook her off and stepped away from her. "That's obscene, Ramita." He grimaced in disgust. "That's impossible." "We don't know anything yet, Raj. Mummy has been too upset to even raise the topic with him. She didn't want to tell you, but I thought you should know." "Well, what if it's true, Ramita?" he asked, shaking his head. "Surely it's impossible," he thought. "What then? What are we supposed to do?" "I don't know. There's nothing we can do but stand by him for now until we know. He is our father." "Well, that's not an accusation to be taken lightly," he said. "I can't even think about this right now, Ramita. I'm going to bed." He trudged up the stairs, his mind reeling, unwilling to think badly of the man who had been his hero his whole life. When he crawled into bed, his last thought before falling asleep was that his familiar bedroom felt foreign. The dream was so vivid he thought it was real. He was in a room with 50 or more young children. They squatted in rows, hunched over work mats, chiseling and painting small statues. He smelled the suffocating stench of urine and saw an open latrine in the corner. The room was filled with smoke from a small kiln, and many of the children were coughing. As he moved closer, he could see they held statues of the Lord Krishna and a dancing Shiva in their small hands. He could tell from their emaciated bodies that they had not eaten well in a long time. Some had scabs and sores on the skin of their arms, others had red gashes. Raj felt sick and threw up in his dream. He woke with a start, wondering if he had messed his bed. He turned on the light and went to the bathroom to splash cold water on his face. When he saw his healthy, well-fed face in the mirror, he felt like he might be sick for real. It took a long time for Raj to fall asleep again. He had always assumed he would work alongside his father and eventually take over his successful export business, selling religious relics to Western countries. Of course, he was aware of and embarrassed by the existence of child labor in India, but he never in a million years imagined his father would employ such a despicable practice. As he lay awake, he remembered a line from the New Beginnings book. "Humans must reform first before the world can be reformed." He wondered what it would take to reform a world where horrors like these were common. Raj took his time getting ready for breakfast the next morning. As usual, the tea trolley and his freshly pressed clothes awaited him as he emerged from the bath. He checked his hair in the mirror, using his wet palms to flatten the small, unruly fringe over his ears. He tucked a clean shirt into his sharply creased pants and tightened his belt. Finally, he couldn't delay any longer and went downstairs. He sat in his usual place between his parents. He smiled at the maid when she placed his usual breakfast in front of him. She looked astonished, and Raj felt a pang of guilt for all the times he had so rudely ignored her in the past. His father was reading the morning paper and looked up briefly to make eye contact with Raj. "Good morning, son," he said. "Welcome back." "Good morning, Dad." Raj looked closely at his dad for signs of what? His father folded the paper and laid it down neatly next to his plate. He took a sip of chai, then asked, "How's Beijing and school?" "Fine, Dad." Raj looked for something more to say. "The classes are more challenging than my old school. The students are from all over the world. Auntie and uncle are very good to me." How was he going to introduce the topic he really wanted to discuss? "Uncle tells me you have made friends," his father prompted. "Yes," Raj replied, "from Canada, Ethiopia, and Vietnam." "Ah, Canada. We do good business in Canada," his father smiled. When his mother left the table for a moment, Raj turned to his father. "Dad, I had a terrible dream about children working in a factory," he said abruptly. "Is it a common business practice?" His father turned away to look out the window. Then, in a measured tone, he said, "There is such a need for manual labor in the factories today, Raj. It's becoming harder and harder to be competitive in the global market." Raj stared at his father in disbelief. He couldn't ask the question that most needed asking. "Many young people are looking for work," his father continued. "They need money to send to their families in the villages." "But children?" Raj spluttered. "The opportunities you have to travel, to study abroad and live as you do would not be possible without someone making tough business decisions, Raj." His father's eyes were opaque behind his silver-rimmed glasses. "I can't believe this," thought Raj. "He's actually justifying child labor." Raj looked down at the gorgeous teak dining table with the polished silver and fine china. He felt the marble floor beneath his slippered feet and looked up at the maid who waited patiently to respond to the next command. He felt sick. When Solomon walked into the coffee shop next to the dirt market, he saw Mei Ling sitting at a table with her head down. She didn't notice him approach, and he was about to catch a glimpse over her shoulder of the coin-sized drawing in the middle of her notebook page. When Solomon walked into the coffee shop next to the dirt market, he saw Mei Ling sitting at a table with her head down. She didn't notice him approach, and he was able to catch a glimpse over her shoulder of the coin-sized drawing in the middle of her notebook page. "Wow, Mei Ling, that's amazing," he said. "You're an incredible artist." She flipped the book closed. "Oh, it's just a hobby," she said dismissively. "No, let me see. It's incredible." Solomon persisted as he took a seat across from her. She sighed and handed over the notebook. It was filled with pencil drawings of fine lines that curved and looped in and around themselves, creating complex mandalas. Each was unique. In some, the lines were thicker, highlighting lotus flowers, stars, and spirals. The precision of the layout was a clear testament to Mei Ling's mathematical mind, but the artistry was subtle and refined. Solomon stared at the drawings for a long time until Mei Ling cleared her throat, prompting him to look up at her. "I didn't know you were so talented, Mei Ling. How come you've never mentioned it?" He looked at her in awe. "There's not much to say. I love to draw. It's relaxing, and I can get lost in it easily. I wanted to take an art class this term, but my parents said it would interfere with my tutoring schedule." Mei Ling stared at the drawing, her eyes softening as she traced the curves of the outer shape. The mention of her parents brought the horrible reality of her father's death front and center. "Are you okay?" Solomon asked. "I was in a fog for nearly a month after my dad died." He spoke calmly, slowly, unsure what her reaction would be. "Fog is a good word," she said, then straightened suddenly as if to shake it off. "I needed to get out of the apartment." He noticed her cheeks were blotchy, a leftover from the tears, he figured. "Mum's having a hard time," Mei Ling continued. "I know it's terrible, but I just needed to get away. Everything in the apartment reminds me of him." She was rubbing her hands together as she spoke. It gets easier, he said gently, eventually. Him not being here has made a huge hole in my life, she said, fighting tears. He was always there for me. He took the edge off everything. I mean, sitting in the car with him on the way to school was the best part of my day. I can't imagine going on with just me and Mom. She kept her head down. But it is the only option, right? Said Solomon. Of course, she looked up at him, her eyes brimming, but it's hard to imagine. A single tear slid down her face. She didn't wipe it away. Instead, she stood and said, "Let's walk. I love the market. I find all the old stuff soothing." She put her notebook into her bag and took her coat off the back of the chair. Sure, Solomon followed her out of the cafe. As they neared the main gates of the dirt market, they passed people on the ground with cages full of yapping puppies for sale. Next to the opening, an old man with gnarled hands and dirty pants sat next to a plastic tub the size of a small sink, filled with turtles for sale. The dirt market was an open building with poles holding up a tin roof. It got its name from the dirt floor that made everything seem dusty and old. There were rows and rows of antiques, jewelry, calligraphy, and all manner of strange pieces of furniture, some ancient, some new. They stood next to a stand selling Chinese calligraphy, bold brushstrokes of 1 or 2 letters on scrolls hanging between bamboo sticks. Solomon gestured to one of the pieces. "What does this one mean?" "Beauty," Mei Ling replied faintly. He pointed to another. "Hope," she said. Solomon showed her several more hangings. Mei Ling's voice grew in confidence as she told him what each one meant. "Are they all positive?" he asked. "Mostly," she said, smiling, and moved over to the next stand where 2 silver balls lay nestled side by side in a wooden box, cushioned with red velvet. "What are those?" Solomon asked. "They're stress balls. You hold them between your hands and move them back and forth as a way to relieve tension. Listen." She picked them up, and Solomon could hear a faint tinkling as the balls moved. Suddenly, Mei Ling dropped the balls onto the velvet, as if they were burning her hands. "Every time I see something silver, I remember Ravana's steely eyes," she shuddered. "Lately, I've been noticing silver all over the place," Solomon remarked. "Me too," Mei Ling said. "Do you think it's a sign that Ravana's around?" "She promised she'd try to stop us," Solomon said, moving on to the next booth. Mei Ling stopped in her tracks, a realization dawning. "Solomon," she said, "the car." She looked at him. "It was silver." Solomon gasped. "Oh my God, Mei Ling." He stood staring at her. "Did Ravana do that?" They looked at each other, absorbing the possibility. "She's making bad things happen," Solomon said. "I think you're right, but why?" asked Mei Ling. "It's not like Ravana gains anything from my father's death." "Well, maybe she's trying to distract us and take us off track," Solomon suggested. Mei Ling paused. "I can't believe I'm saying this, but knowing how Ravana operates might help." She stopped, then said, "Solomon, we need to keep focused on this task. I can't let my dad's death be for nothing. That would be letting Ravana win."